Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Eric, and today I'm reviewing the recent season of Black Mirror. Season 4 just came out, probably in the last few weeks, I think. Now, if you're not sure what Black Mirror is, or you just haven't seen it, basically it's a sci-fi anthology, meaning that every episode's different, sort of a little bit like Twilight Zone, though in this show it focuses on the world of technology and how that's sort of going to affect society in the future. Most episodes are set in the not too distant future, but a lot of the technology can seem quite futuristic. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the first 3 seasons, so when they announced season 4, I was totally in. Now it's finally here, so I'm going to give you my thoughts on each individual episode and then sort of wrap it up as a whole and give my overall thoughts on the whole season. Before I go on, I want to say this will not contain spoilers. I think it's kind of hard with Black Mirror because with a lot of the episodes, it's really good if you go into it without knowing like anything. So if you want to do that, then, you know, maybe avoid this review. But otherwise, yeah, I'm just going to kind of give basic plot details, you know, what's in the blurb, what you've probably seen in advertisements or trailers of it already. So the first episode is a really strong one. It's called USS Callister. It's about an hour and a quarter, so fairly long. And it revolves around the idea of non-sentient beings and sort of how far we go as to treating them as if they're not, you know, human, basically. How far we go as to treating them like slaves because they don't have a consciousness and so it doesn't matter. The next time you're playing a video game and you're just torturing an NPC, you'll probably start to question your morals a little bit. That being said, I don't think this episode is specifically relevant in this day and age. I think it does still feel like a little while off, but it is an interesting thing to question, and I think in years to come, we'll look back on this episode and go, hey, this was quite ahead of its time. Certainly one of the strongest episodes of the season, but sadly there is a little bit of a downwards decline for the majority of the rest of the season, I found. The next episode, directed by Jodie Foster, revolves around the idea of extreme parenting, I suppose you would say, but it's sort of been exposed a little bit more through the use of technology, specifically a device that allows a parent to see through the eyes of their kids. Basically, they have some kind of implant just in their ear, and then they can see through the eyes wherever they are. So, you know, parents who are extremely worried all the time about their kids, you know, doing dangerous things or, you know, getting themselves into trouble can always see where they are at any given moment. Again, I would categorize this one in the stronger side of the season. It focuses a lot, which is something I really like. It focuses a lot on the struggle of human temptation and human weakness, instead of just like, you know, pointing at the technology and going, the technology is bad, because obviously the technology here is quite creepy, but sort of what's maybe more creepier is the idea of a parent who is just totally obsessing over the idea of, you know, taking care of their children to this degree. I always kind of cringe when I see parents who have like a leash on their kids and, you know, when they're going walking out and about in town. That really just irks me on the inside, so I can totally pick up on the human nature coming through in this episode. Following this episode, it's probably one of the weakest episodes of this season, I found personally. It's called Crocodile. It revolves around kind of a murder mystery type case. The technology in play in this episode is sort of an advancement, I guess you could say, of a lie detector on a much more extreme scale. Basically, they plug sort of like an implant, a little bit similar to the last episode, I believe it was, and it allows them to scan people's memories and see exactly what they've done, so detectives can gain really specific information when they're questioning witnesses and suspects. The reason I didn't like this episode was that I felt that there wasn't really any believable motivation as to the main character's struggles without trying to give away anything. I felt like the writers and directors almost wanted you to sort of sympathize with this character, or at the very least understand the process they were going through, and even if you don't sympathize with it, sort of to at least go, okay, that makes sense that they're thinking that. I just didn't buy it, personally. It went to a really dark place that I didn't really feel was super necessary. I think if writers are going to go in a really dark direction, they need to use this as a tool to further their moral standpoint, their, you know, the theme of the episode. I didn't feel it was completely justified how they went dark in this episode. I felt like it was just kind of going dark for the sake of going dark. And really by the end of the episode, I was just a little bit angry at how it did this. And yeah, I didn't really walk away feeling like I'd learned anything. I just felt like it was kind of, you know, appealing to people who are just into watching, you know, horror or things being dark just for the sake of being dark without any real reason. Anyway, moving right along, the next episode ups the quality a little bit. This one revolves around the evolution of dating apps and the idea that in the future, our dating apps will sort of govern what we do before we even meet the date and how we sort of make our decisions to an extreme level. Basically, the dating app controls everyone we meet, and it sort of calculates how we react to different dates, and then uses that information to calculate who the next person we should meet would be, and then eventually come up with an ultimate partner who would suit us perfectly for life. For the majority of this episode, I thought the concept was really cool because I thought it was quite believable. I could see this almost happening in the future, even though at the moment, you know, most of the use of dating apps is just to meet the person and then it's up to you to escalate from there yourself, I suppose. Whereas in this episode, it's like this app is like just telling you everything to do, almost. I'm kind of torn on the ending of this episode. Without spoiling it, it is a really cool twist ending, but then on the other hand, it kind of undermines what Black Mirror is all about. It actually doesn't really paint this technology in a dark light like all of these other episodes do. There wasn't really any kind of moral takeaway from this episode, I suppose, as much. I suppose if you take away your expectations of Black Mirror, the story of this episode is really great, especially if you're a newcomer. Following this episode was another one I'm a little bit torn on. Another one where the story was really great, but I just didn't really feel like there was that much moral conflict or, you know, moral depth, any real takeaway from this episode. It's called Metalhead. Basically all it really is a, you know, robots taking over the world, turn rogue type story. On a technical level, it's amazing. The shaky cam paired with the black and white really adds to this claustrophobic feel throughout this whole episode. There's a real sense of threat, but again, like I said, I'm kind of torn on it because, like, from a story standpoint alone, it's really impressive, but then if you look at the other Black Mirror episodes where you have this real moral conflict, you're not really getting that much from this episode. You'll probably just walk away from it and go, huh, that was cool, go off to sleep. Finally, the last episode is a goodie, probably the best of this season, I'd say. It combines, I think, around 3 or 4 different stories that you at first think are kind of just completely separated and, you know, it's just a collection of stories in one episode, but then right at the end you kind of get a little bit of I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but a little bit of completion. Things that happen at the start of the episode that you thought nothing of suddenly make sense at the end of the episode. What I really liked about this episode that I thought was quite creative was that there wasn't really one piece of technology. It was more of an evolution of one piece of technology. And then at the end it kind of ties it all together when you're not expecting it, and things that happen, as I said, things that happen at the start, they suddenly make sense at the end. Once again, there's not a real strong moral takeaway from this episode. It's just a kind of bit of a murky wash of a lot of kind of different issues intertwined into one story. But the storytelling is just so great, I really can't fault this episode despite of this. So now I've given you an overview of all of these episodes, I thought I'd sort of sum it up with my overall thoughts of this season. Personally, I think the first 3 seasons are stronger than season 4. If you're a newcomer, however, to Black Mirror, I would recommend watching maybe the 4th season first, because you won't walk into it with these expectations of what you think Black Mirror should be. I suppose my real gripe with it was that I always considered Black Mirror to be on 2 levels. At face value, you expect it to be this show about how technology is going to be dangerous in the future. It's a sci-fi drama, horror, technology is overtaking the world, all these dangerous things happening with new technology. We've seen that a lot before in other media, but as I've said, the storytelling here is just so great that this show it really stands on its own. But then on another level on top of this, there's something that really catches you by surprise, which I thought was a little bit more prominent in the first 3 seasons. And that is when you realise that this show isn't about the dangers of technology, but actually about the dangers of our own human psychology. You realise that the technology is really just an outlet to expose or to exploit human weaknesses and human temptations, and that the humans are the real villains of all of these episodes. I think it's quite clever because I think a lot of these weaknesses and temptations are already evident in humans at this point, despite not having this technology as an outlet for it. It's just a little bit more on our subconscious. But at the same time, if you look at how technology has changed over the years, you notice how certain technologies bring out and expose certain things in our subconscious into our consciousness. Classic example being social media, which has sort of brought out this unknown narcissism in a lot of people. We didn't really know we had it there, but since we've been given social media and been given this outlet to, you know, put ourselves into the public eye, it suddenly brings out this weakness in us and this temptation in us and this addiction in us. And Black Mirror was always about kind of exaggerating this technology to see just how far our weaknesses and temptations get exploited and get exposed. And that was always what was really captivating about it to me when I walked away from each episode. Season 4, I'm afraid, it doesn't really have as much of that. It focuses a lot more on the story. I feel like a lot of the writing and directing choices in this season were slightly more commercial, you know, just trying to make things edgy, trying to make it interesting from a story standpoint rather than really trying to drive home a certain moral theme. But as I said, if you're new to Black Mirror, never seen it before, I would recommend checking this season out first because you're not walking in with these expectations. It's still a great season. Storytelling is great. I just kind of missed this second moral layer that made the first 3 seasons go from great to excellent. If you've seen season 4, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Whether you think it's not quite as good as the first 3 seasons, maybe you think it's better. Let me know what your favourite episode was. I think that last episode did it for me, but the first one was certainly a strong opening as well. Look forward to more vlogs and reviews in the future. This is a new thing I'm sort of trying out. I just realised I haven't been recording through this mic the whole episode, so I've just been going through my camera's internal speaker, so apologies if the audio is not as good. I'll have that fixed next time. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you all later. Ciao.